Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. After we talked a couple of weeks ago about artificial intelligence and what's happening with our society, questions started pouring in. And today I'll answer 10 of them. The first question. So let's formulate it. Who will be replaced by artificial intelligence? Well, doctors and lawyers can relax. Nothing threatens them. Quite the opposite. The demand will only increase. Because without a person who bears responsibility, a living physical person, nothing can be done. Well, it's just not possible. At least, it doesn't work in America. Yes, I think it's the same in other countries too. But let's distinguish between artificial intelligence and regular automation. Any mechanical tasks that can be easily reduced to an algorithm, so to speak, and don't require identification. Tasks like these can be automated without involving artificial intelligence. For example, lathe systems, packaging lines. Sometimes you need to change the technology for this. For example, picking apples, tomatoes, blueberries. Apples and blueberries are simply shaken off the bush or tree and collected below, and tomatoes are cut together with the plants, ripe and green alike. Both are separated from the bushes right in the field by harvesters, and then they are sorted at the warehouses. The green ones are sent to ripen. Ripening brings them to your table. This is simple automation. Artificial intelligence isn't needed, although productivity increases by an order of magnitude. But there are tasks where the calculations are too complex and it's not possible to create an algorithm. Then neural networks are used to make decisions based on known examples, which are used to train the system. This is already artificial intelligence, and simple intellectual tasks can be readily turned into algorithms, which can be performed based on previously known analogies that are used to train neural networks so they can make decisions quickly. For example, creating a resume using standard forms and original information, or drafting a court filing in some fairly simple typical case. AI can work as a dispatcher, take job orders, and schedule them. It can write simple programs. AI can analyze a lot of information well and find good analogies. It can edit texts, adapting them to a certain style, or it can compose poems on a given topic. Today, effective use that can replace people is possible in the following areas. Assistance in organizing work as an office manager with partial displacement of humans. What does that mean? The work is organized in the AI system. You need a person who would sit and categorize them, and checks what's written there and puts it in the right section. Help with preparing documents, especially standard types. Help with selecting materials on a given topic, structuring them. Help with finding sample analogs and suitable technologies. Writing stories, scripts, poems, and other creative works of average quality. That is, AI allows you to significantly increase human work efficiency, replacing pay attention assistants who performs simple intellectual work, that is specifically intellectual, not physical activity. For professionals who didn't have such assistance, this is a sure way to increase work efficiency and productivity, and therefore income. For professionals who have such assistance, this is a way to reduce costs by cutting unnecessary staff. That's how, so to speak, people lose their jobs, right? Who can't be replaced by AI yet? Specialties with specific skills, where there is a lot of manual labor and unusual situations, for example, electricians and plumbers. Let's look at some examples to understand this. A doctor examines a patient. He dictates the results of the examination, and he records the information into a file directly into the patient's chart. This saves the doctor's time and increases his productivity. No need to write, no need to type. After all, half the time I'm talking to the doctor, he asks something and then he starts typing. It's silly. Then the x-ray goes somewhere and someone makes a report. Why? And it'll do all of this. It allows you to reduce the number of radiologists and increase the speed and efficiency of processing x-rays. Not only did they get rid of the radiologist, but they also started getting results faster and better. The doctor's assistant examines the patient before the appointment, for example. He collects the initial information, temperature, blood pressure, blood oxygen saturation, and the additional information as well. In dialogue mode, he can do all the same work with the person participating directly. Just like a nurse or a doctor's assistant would ask, you answer, and that's it. Put your finger here. I put my finger. Thank you very much. He pricked. Actually, there's no need to prick anymore. No need. They just do it remotely. I think they do it with blood. If not, they will soon. Reduction of the physician assistant position. They reduced it. Office manager, for taking orders at an auto repair shop by phone. Reduction of the position plus the possibility of round-the-clock work. Why have 3 people for 24 hours? You can just put this one thing in. Insurance company manager, receiving applications, by. For accident claims, right? There's not much variety, it's the same thing, 1,000 times. And using analogies, it can easily gather all the necessary information. Convenient. For engineers and inventors, it helps to find examples, analogs, useful technologies that help solve problems, and so on. For programmers, it helps with writing programs. Eliminating routine work. It's important. As always, when the law of displacement of humans from technical systems applies, as long as there is a shortage of professional specialists, their efficiency will increase. Increase without displacing people. By increasing the volume of services they provide, for example, doctors there is already a catastrophic shortage of them. And as we can see, this kind of work allows us to cut a large number of workers doing simple knowledge work. At the same time, it increases the efficiency of specialists and professionals. That is, we remove people who are engaged in simple intellectual labor once again, but at the same time, we greatly improve things. The quality of the specialist's work, and allowed him to earn more. One more question. The speed at which white-collar workers are being replaced by AI is faster than the creation of new jobs. Who will feed those who have been laid off? Well, some experts say that up to 75% of jobs will either be replaced by AI in the next 18 months or will become completely unnecessary. Well, usually all these numbers are just made up. Sorry, but that's the truth. They're just saying things off the top of their heads. And I'll say it too. It's just made up. I don't believe it. They have no proof. None at all. Right? Well, let's be honest. AI will eliminate a lot of jobs. But it will create new ones. Fewer maybe, and not right away. Yes. But completely different jobs will appear because of new needs. We'll talk about this again later. Question. Who will feed the millions who are laid off until new jobs that require new skills appear? This is what we were talking about, that people will be laid off and so on. The government, ? But with what money? After all, people who are laid off don't pay taxes to the government. Accordingly, this reduces the government's ability to pay benefits. Well, let's add to this. Most office workers, doctors, and engineers will retrain. They will retrain as individual proletarians, carpenters, electricians, plumbers. Oh, that's going to be quite a process, right? Because of the increased supply, there will be 10 times more electricians. And with decreasing demand, the people who were laid off aren't very solvent. The rates will drop significantly. That's the issue, putting such workers on the brink of survival. So doctors have turned into proletarians. And there's such competition that they have no chance to survive. They're barely surviving. Most likely the so-called elites. It's a scare tactic. Elites. They'll drive all the rest of the people into reservations. My God, how many times has this already been said? And they'll fence them in so that the poor, they're just trying to scare us with all this. So they don't get in the way and die out there without food, water, or resources. Oh my God. For a while, they'll feed the crowd a little, but they don't need that many people, so most of them will die out soon. I combined several questions together. Let's make this question short now. Who will feed or how will we feed the people displaced by AI? Let me try to answer that. First of all, calm down. Unfortunately or fortunately, the implementation of AI will go much slower than people say, despite its great potential, and there are many reasons for that. In particular, strangely enough, how quickly people displaced by AI become redundant has the least to do with the pace of technological development. It depends much more on the socio-economic situation in society. What does that mean? Let's say bureaucracy puts restrictions on business development with an excessive number of rules, regulations, and all sorts of things. New jobs won't appear and displaced people won't be able to find work, especially if the benefits are high. Then they won't want to work at all. If there are a lot of investments in the country and the government stimulates market development, deregulation, and incentives for new businesses, many jobs will appear, both with the help of AI and in other areas where things are speeding up, satisfying old needs and the emergence of new ones. We talked about this with you last time. For example, now it is possible to expand the deployment of self-driving vehicles using AI, or mass housing construction with automated equipment, design, and the production of automated lines. And this will create a large number of new jobs. Reorganization of the energy sector, backup batteries, updating the energy structure. God, so many people will be needed there. The beginning of the construction of the alter ego system, creating a new education system, a huge number of people, updating services for the elderly. The prototypes are already working quite well in the US. Let me remind you that the process of education and absorbing surplus people has an impact. So, the dialectical interaction of two main laws. First, the law of people being displaced from various activities, and the law of increasing needs. Whichever one is stimulated, that's the result you'll get. Everything is actually just the same as in all the other cases. In the areas of life of human society, in the areas of our activity, potentially there is a lot of work to be done. I demonstrated this in the previous video. If nothing interferes with the market in developing new industries and technologies, and the huge investments that are now ready, so to speak, to flow into the US will contribute to this. If we develop needs in the market, there will be enough work for everyone. Everyone will pay taxes, and then the government won't have to support the unemployed with lost tax revenue. One more question. It sounds nice, but kind of like a fairy tale. You talk about decades and centuries so easily, it's breathtaking. Yes, in the long run, maybe that's how it will be unless they start with military use as usual. But in the next 10 to 20 years, there will be a severe crisis, and it's not certain that you and I will live through it. Again, I'm just summarizing, so to speak, several comments. Let's formulate the question. In these questions, there is baseless doubt about what was said. Here's the answer. I'll answer as we Jews usually do by answering a question with a question. If in 1880 someone told a peasant that his hut would be lit not by a kerosene lamp but by electricity, he wouldn't know what that is. Would he have believed it? Or that it would be possible to talk on the telephone over a distance of 100 kilometers? Mashka went 100 kilometers away, picked up the receiver, and you shout something, and she hears you from 100 kilometers away. Mashka, can you hear her? Would a peasant have believed it? And if we had been told 50 years ago that with the help of a small box, a cell phone, it would be possible to talk wirelessly with a person on the other side of the globe, where everyone walks upside down, head down, would you have believed it? And would you have believed in the internet? You might have believed in a flat earth, but never in the internet. What I just told you is not a fairy tale or science fiction. This is what they are already starting to do now. And what will appear not in 50 years, but in 510 years, no matter how fantastic it may sound. And in general, if you have doubts about something, at least try to back them up somehow with arguments and facts. Those are your doubts, not just, well, I just don't. Why don't you believe? Well, you don't believe. So what? Don't believe. That's the question. That's all true, but it means that most people will have to retrain, and many are not ready for that. Especially, people who aren't very young. Well, yes. And besides, retraining after displacement leads to a loss of social status. That is, laid-off white-collar workers end up doing less skilled jobs. So, the question is, will people be able to retrain to get new professions? Will they keep their position in society? Let's figure it out. I have bad news for you. Indeed, the development and application of AI requires a new level of education, which comes with generational change. Let's recall the technological revolution in the countryside at the end of the 19th and the beginning of the 20th century. The number of people working in agriculture decreased threefold. This happened gradually. And not because peasants gradually moved to the city with their families. No, it was the young people who went to the city, gaining higher education and new skills. And the elderly stayed in the villages where they were gradually replaced by machinery. Some of the young people also stayed there, learning to use new equipment and technologies, tractors, combines, incubators, and poultry farms. So, as generations changed, a technological revolution was taking place. Of course, technologies using AI will require a high level of education, which young people are now receiving in schools and universities. They will gradually work in new industries with new technologies that use artificial intelligence, which is increasingly penetrating the economy and our lives. Well, just like it was with the peasants in the 19th century when the parish school had 4 grades, then there was 8 years of education and later 10 years of schooling. And what about the older generation who don't? Well, for those who aren't able, yes, to master these skills, some of them will still be able to. Well, what will allow them to work in the new conditions? Well, electricians, plumbers who are in high demand and can work until retirement. But many won't be able to do this, and they really will lose both part of their salary and their status. This was largely the case with immigrants who moved from the USSR to the United States of America. Not everyone was able to keep their status as a doctor or their status as engineers, which they had in the USSR. But this is an objective process, and it's very important to understand that people, regardless of losing their job and status, have to work. And under no circumstances should welfare or basic income be given. This will lead to degradation. Well, both for the individual and for society. As with any revolution, there will be losses, and unfortunately, they are unavoidable. But gradually, over time, all of them will go into well-deserved retirement, and the new generation will live in a new reality. And probably most importantly, they will live better. Question, or rather, not a question, but a statement. So I agree with Elon Musk. As soon as AI realizes that humans are no longer needed, AI will make sure to reduce the population. Wow.
Нигде.
Nowhere has humanity been so successful. We, humans, not AI. As in the art of killing our own kind, we've become amazingly good at it. Well, of course, AI will be used in warfare to control drone systems and other equipment. It won't be able to organize wars, but it will definitely influence them. To organize a war, you have to be a state structure, not even a person, a state structure. Well, all right. That's not what we're talking about right now. Modern air defense systems without AI are not capable of analyzing countermeasures against attacks by several hundred drones at the same time. And networks will successfully handle this. And the same thing will happen in other situations where regular algorithms don't work. And without a doubt, AI will handle such combat tasks better than a human, controlling weapons and quickly, very quickly assessing the situation. And huge resources will be spent on this, creating a huge number of new jobs. And whoever wins the leadership will win a big prize, battles for the future. That's why we want the center of this to be here, in the United States of America. Thank God Trump is working on this. Of course, a lot of ethical questions arise here. For example, can AI make a decision to kill a person? And won't this give AI control over humanity? By the way, some companies refuse to cooperate with the Pentagon, with military agencies. Is this the right thing to do? We have to understand that totalitarian countries will do this, which means that those who stick to moral principles will lose in war. So, you'll die with your morals intact? Is it possible to navigate between Scylla and Charybdis and keep your moral qualities without losing in battle? Well, that's actually each company's own decision. We'll leave those questions to you. And if someone asks me, I'll answer no, or in Hebrew, lo. We're now talking about the work of people displaced from production. In terms of absorbing surplus people, it's an opportunity to employ a large number of workers. By the way, this is described in detail in the book, the link to which will be provided in the video description. Question: I'm not sure about the US, but in Russia, the whole staff needs replacing. So CFR. I don't know what SFR is. For one AI, the Federation Council could have saved tens of trillions of rubles, I don't know, and at the same time doubled pensions at least, and then replaced the entire tax service with AI, then all the staff at Sberbank, Yes, and VTB, then reduce the number of officials at Rosneft and Gazprom and eliminate all subsidiaries and shell companies. I hope we're having a conversation, yes. Oh, subsidiaries, right? Okay. That's a well-formulated question. Well, not just about Russia, yes, artificial intelligence and bureaucracy. Well, you can't disagree with that, of course. Indeed, the biggest reduction should take place in government administration structures, where everything is essentially regulated enough and can be done with the help of artificial intelligence. There will also be less stealing. So whatever is programmed, that's what will happen. But not more than that. For example, in the city administration, there are inspectors who issue permits for house reconstruction. Right now, it really slows down the work of builders, but such analysis can be done by AI in a split second, and all these inspectors will become unnecessary. However, the bosses want to receive bribes, and they still don't know how to get bribes through AI, so until they figure it out, they'll keep these people too. Well, unless they check on site, which means goodbye to a cozy job. And you have to go to construction sites. I mean, AI won't be able to go to a construction site and check everything there. Well, at some point it will be able to, but for now, maybe a drone will fly over and check, or maybe with a satellite or something like that. But for now, the next step is that you can't just sit at home. You put on your boots, grab an umbrella, and go to the construction site. And by the way, that's where you take the bribe. Quietly, right? Not in your office, but over there with them. Or processing some documents. Issuing an apostille for notarized documents. It all comes down to checking the notary stamp for accuracy and making sure the notary is on the list approved by the state. And there's a person sitting there getting paid for that. And sometimes they're even drunk or in a bad mood. Yeah, honestly, we don't really need people like that. Well, that means they'll have to look for another cushy job. And do you think the bureaucracy will be thrilled about using AI at all? No. They'll fight to the death. Just like the party they support. There will be bureaucratic games against the development of AI, and all sorts of scary stories will be spread about how AI will oppress people. All right, here's a question. From your description of the advantages of AI, a pretty clear picture emerges in my mind of an all-encompassing sunny cyber gulag. External control over every human action, complete lack of autonomy. Finally, your argument about the decreasing risk of nuclear weapons use is refuted by a recent experiment. Researchers from King's College London tested the leading AI models, GPT-52 Klotzen Net 4 and Gemini 3 Flash. In military conflict simulations, the result was, in 95% of scenarios, artificial intelligence used nuclear weapons at least once. Not a single model ever chose either negotiation or surrender. Scientists explain the results by saying that artificial intelligence doesn't have the human fear of nuclear weapons, and the models might not recognize all the risks that are obvious to people. Okay, so what kind of scary story is this? Here's the scary part. Artificial intelligence will take control over society and start throwing atomic and other bombs. That's one of the scary stories. It's clear that no one will allow artificial intelligence to make decisions of strategic importance. No one will give artificial intelligence access to the nuclear button. The danger comes from having such a button in human hands. The world is full of idiots, fanatics, and underdeveloped morons, and many of them manage to gain power. Is there a real danger? Is there a real risk of munitions exploding in a warehouse? Absolutely. And what about explosions at a nuclear power plant? Yes, there is. You just need to.
Меры.
Precautions are needed. Safety measures are needed. Okay, next question. That's a different question. Why do you think goods are getting cheaper? But won't the capitalists want to get the maximum value they can pull out of your pocket? Our pocket, obviously. There's no competition. How come? Healthcare is only affordable for the elite now. Why is that? On the contrary, what about the price of a driverless taxi? Will it be cheaper than Uber? Excuse me? I don't know. That's the point. So, does that mean driverless taxis are more expensive than Uber in your view? Since when do rich guys need to care about us? Well, if you became rich, of course you wouldn't care. They will think about how to get richer, not about how you should work, and you don't plan to work yourself. Whatever AI does, it won't serve ordinary people or care about them, and it shouldn't care. AI services will be set up to help the elite and reduce production costs. It won't make goods and services cheaper for the general public. Well, I apologize, of course, yes, sir, but you don't understand a damn thing about economics or mathematics. Because the greed of owners and producers knows no bounds. And how do you know? How do you know? It's your greed that knows no bounds. Oligarchs, they're not that stupid. They didn't become rich for nothing. Well, some of them robbed someone, sure, but those who became rich, what must be going on in their heads, right? Oligarchs and those in power won't allow food to be cheap or even free. Why even free and of good quality? There'll be both kinds, cheap, low-quality stuff and more expensive, higher-quality stuff. Well, all right, I'll answer now. Otherwise, the people will become uncontrollable and will tell their government to get lost, living for their own pleasure on their own land, where robots will run their farm. But where will these robots come from? Who will make them? And a free person will engage in creative work, entirely devoted to creating, but who will pay for the electricity? Well, all right, let's formulate the question. Why are goods getting cheaper? Why would capitalists suddenly start caring about the poor? They won't. Absolutely. Mass usage will lead to the impoverishment of the people. That's a huge question in the end, right? Well, let's try. Actually, this is a more or less normal reaction of people who lived in the USSR and are poisoned by communist ideology. In the world of the free market, the so-called market economy operates, and no matter how you imagine it, it has, just like geometry, like physics, like chemistry, its own laws. It can't operate differently. It works in a certain way. So, will a capitalist try to make the maximum profit? Of course he will. But total profit is not just the profit from a single product multiplied by the sales volume. Just think about it yourself. Is it more profitable to make $1,000 from a single sale with no one else able to afford it, or to make $10 10,000 times? As soon as the price goes up, you limit the size of your market, and a capitalist will set the maximum price that still allows for mass sales. And that's what keeps the price in check, because it's been kept in check like that for many, many years. And it will also be kept in check by other capitalists who will also want to make a profit. There will be competition, as Adam Smith said, and everything will be regulated by the invisible hand of the market. Well, you make shoes, and he makes shoes, right? And your shoes are worse but more expensive, so who will buy them from you, right? All right, if a capitalist reduces the costs of his product, the first thing he'll do is lower the price, not raise it but lower it, to capture the competitor's market and make a profit. And that's why the introduction of new equipment and technology traditionally leads to a decrease in cost or an increase in quality. The cost stayed the same, but the quality improved. A capitalist will do anything to pull the last dollar out of the worker's pocket, of the worker, even lowering the price to a minimal profit margin. Why? So that people buy from him, not from someone else, not from the neighbor. So that everyone can buy, so that everyone can and wants to buy his goods. That's when he will start cashing in. By earning, of course. Okay, we're already moving almost to the very end, question 9, and there will be a 10th. Most likely the so-called elites, again, the elites. Is it the same person or what? They'll drive everyone. No, not that one. The rest will be put in reservations, fenced in to keep them out of the way, and left to die again without food, water, or resources. My God. For a while, they'll feed the crowd, but they don't need that many people, so most will die out soon, and the elite will get the chance to create and express themselves. And to express themselves. Well, I mean with swearing, although there won't be many consumers of these masterpieces besides themselves, so why make masterpieces if there's no one to show them to? All right. In short, nothing good will happen for 90% of the current population, I want to say right away. pessimists will die out first. I suspect that dinosaurs were pessimists. All right, let's formulate the question. What other possible social consequences are happening as people are being displaced by AI? Yes. Well, we've come to probably the most crucial question. Work. What else? Think about a simple question. Right now, the vast majority of people have jobs, although in terms of their needs, they're like peasants from the late 19th century. And their needs were like this. Bread all year round. Milk, meat, on Sundays, boots, one set of simple clothes, and a roof over their heads, a house for the whole family. Well, maybe one more set of clean clothes to wear to church on Sundays. That's it. Easily, absolutely. 5% of the US population can provide for the entire country and maybe even the world. And the rest won't need to work. All the needs from 100 years ago have been met. Yes, you might say, but what about the car? And what about a house or a spacious apartment? There you have plumbing, heating, electrical appliances, internet, radio, television. What about the Bahamas, Mexico, hotels? I don't stay in 3-star hotels, no. Well, and many other things we're used to. We want to live better and more comfortably than people did 100 years ago. And all these needs, which mostly emerged in the 20th century, are what all these people are working to satisfy. The remaining 95%, so that everyone has it, 5% produce the basics, and 95% produce everything else. And so, ladies and gentlemen, in the future, everyone will continue to work. It's just that needs will increase even more, there will be more of them, and they will become more diverse and complex. So, to meet these needs, all the displaced people will work. Bernie Sanders and other socialists actually want to put everyone on a universal basic income. Well, without any conditions, like just given to them, like $23,000 to every person simply because they're a living human being. Why? So that people's needs would stay at the same old level, and the frightened people who would be afraid to lose this basic income and other benefits would keep voting for them out of fear. And then people will end up in a situation where their limited needs are satisfied. And whether they'll be happy or not, I don't know, but at least they won't be nervous. Everything's fine, we'll make it to the next election. Is this possible? Yes, it's more than possible. If power ends up in the hands of the socialist bureaucracy, it could lead to a disaster, like what happened in Detroit, which went bankrupt. And that's exactly where the authorities in California, New York, and other states are leading their people now. That's where all the scare stories come from. Like 80% of people will lose their jobs. 74.3% will die in prisons. Stories that are being spread by the democratic socialists. But in reality, there will be more jobs, and other types of work will develop. Will there be a tough transition period? Of course there will be, because it will be tough. If there are proper laws, there won't be. Well, all right, one more question. All right, let's do one more, and I think we'll wrap up after that. And it can also be used for harm. Okay, bots and synthetic video on social networks, fake news in the media, fraud in the electoral process, surveillance of everyone and everything, falsification of any research results, or out of stupidity. Stupidity in, stupidity out, but multiplied many times over. That's why nothing is simple. Well, nothing is simple. It's definitely not simple. AI doesn't have self-awareness, and as a result, no personality. For the same reason, it doesn't and can't have desires. If something isn't in the program code, it won't be done. Well, for example, the desire to take over the world. Right? It's a different story if someone maliciously puts destructive instructions into the program code. But even then, AI will just follow the instructions. Not because it decided to wipe out humanity. AI has no way to form an opinion of its own. Well, probably, right? So, what other dangers are there? What other dangers? First, the use of AI makes it possible to generate fake news in the media and has a strong influence on society. Yes, that's a real danger. Now, as they say, I triple-check every time something comes in, especially if it's something I like. Oh, great, I go check it 3 times. To fight this, develop critical thinking, ladies and gentlemen. There are special videos for that on the channel. Second, malicious use means harming society through viruses, Trojans, and the like. That's for the specialists. Like now, well, they fight this in certain places, in all sorts of places. right? Statistics show that doctors who use AI make more accurate diagnoses and treat better than those who don't use it. But that's not all. You miss the old doctors with unique intuition, not realizing that there were very few of them. Can you imagine what was happening at that time? That the number of people receiving medical care was increasing without any widespread new treatment technology? It's impossible to give people quality medical care. Have you ever thought that the idea that old doctors treated better is largely a myth, which was based on the fact that we didn't really know what people were actually dying from? Think about it. Why did the average life expectancy increase, for example, in the US by more than 8 years? The answer is simple. Better diagnostics, better medicine, better food. We've learned to treat many types of cancer. They put in stents during heart attacks and much more. AI with constant monitoring will significantly improve medicine. And constant monitoring will help prevent most heart attacks and strokes, as well as many other diseases. Well, all right. Let's take one more question. The last one, right? What if this AI develops to the point where it gains consciousness? Gaining consciousness. So this is the direct opposite of the previous question. An AI that gains consciousness means the end of humanity, because it no longer needs us, and we simply become a distraction. Okay, people are lazy by nature. Yes, that's right. If AI does everything for us, people will stop working and developing. AI will develop instead of them. I don't recommend living in such a utopia and suggest looking at the future more realistically. Well, first of all, there's nothing you can do about progress. They already tried to ban drinking in America. Prohibition led to an increase in consumption and, moreover, to the creation of mafias. The same thing happened with drugs and so on. As soon as you ban something, besides, you can't ban it all over the world. That means somewhere it will keep developing. So that's it. It's already here. Now, according to my very unscientific calculations, 0.2% of humanity are capable of thinking, creating, and most importantly, being curious. That's likely the most important quality. They're the ones we pin our hopes on. Because God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, if you remember, those are cities in Canaan, in the land of Canaan. Because he couldn't find even 10 righteous people in them. Those cities apparently, well, according to the description, were called prosperous and densely populated. If, let's say, there were as many as 5,000 people living in them, then 10 righteous people would make up 0.2%, and the cities would have continued to exist. If we don't find enough curious and creative people among us, then that's where we're headed. That's what we deserve. Ladies and gentlemen, below the video you will find a description of the Triz for Everyone channel, Lev Pevsner's book, Civilization, Artificial Intelligence, and Superfluous People in Russian. This is Rodero Publishing from 1926. You can buy it on Amazon, Rodero, Yandex, and similar platforms, and we will also have a link below. And the same book in English will also be provided below, so if anyone is interested. What I told you, almost all of it comes from this book and from what Lev kindly provided to me. So it's insanely interesting, of course, artificial intelligence. Who knows what will happen? Life has already changed. I use it there. I have 3 different ones installed, and they all answer differently. It's so interesting. It's also interesting to keep pushing them. He replies and you ask, "Are you sure?" He dodges, you add, "But I know this." He says, "Oh, really?" Then I'll respond differently. So, gentlemen, this is still not something we should be so incredibly afraid of. It's meant to improve and make our lives easier. Well, like everything else, like atomic energy, of course, it can also hit us hard. So there you go. Goodbye, until we meet again.